I'm Judith Walpole, 68 years old, and yesterday my only son stood in my living room and shouted, "Leave, or I'll call the police." A few hours later, I walked into a realtor's office with nothing but my purse and a plan I never thought I'd have the courage to make. It was the same house my husband Edmund and I spent 3 decades building together, room by room, memory by memory. It was also the house my son believed he would inherit without asking. He never said it outright, but every time he spoke about my future, it was like I'd already disappeared before I go any further. Let me know where you're listening from, and hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to draw the line with someone you love. I've lived in Falls Church, Virginia for most of my life. A quiet town, the kind where everyone waves whether they know your name or not. I met Edmund when I was 22, fresh out of community college, with a certificate in accounting and a rented 1-bedroom with secondhand furniture. He had a deep laugh, good shoulders, and steady hands. We bought this house together when I was 31. We paid it off just after Edmund turned 65. That was the same year he had his heart attack. He was gone before I could even get to the hospital. I still talk to his picture on the mantle, especially when something breaks, or when Quentin says something that leaves me sitting in silence long after the call ends. Quentin was our only child. Edmund always said he'd go far, and he did, at least on paper. He runs tech for a big logistics company now, drives something sleek and black with buttons I don't understand. Lives in a neighborhood with gates and fountains and wall-to-wall windows that look out over homes twice the size of mine. His wife Heather manages a clinic. She's one of those women who always smells like fresh linen and eucalyptus even after a long day. They have 3 kids, Ethan, Piper, and Lily, and for the last few years, I've been the one picking them up from school, watching them after hours, and folding their little laundry when the nanny has a dentist appointment or calls in sick. No one ever asked if I had plans. I don't mind watching them. Piper still hugs me at pickup and tells me about her choir solos. Ethan, though, he's at that age where he barely takes out his earbuds. And Lily, sweet Lily, has some allergy that no one's been able to figure out, which means daycare is a no-go, and I'm her Tuesday and Thursday solution. I do it with love, but even love has limits when it's assumed instead of appreciated. I know Heather thinks babysitting gives me purpose. I think it gives them savings on childcare. On the outside, we look like any modern family balancing careers and grandparent help. But under it all, there's a quiet assumption that I'll always be available. That I won't say no. That I'm here to support their lives, not live my own. They call when the nanny's out. They drop by when it's convenient. They make plans for vacations, houses, new cars. Then they circle back to me only when a babysitter falls through or the budget falls short. Edmund would have said something by now. I didn't, not until the day they showed up with a stranger and a folder full of renovation plans for my kitchen. That part comes later. But that morning, before any of it happened, I was standing by the school gate waiting for Piper. The other parents were mostly younger. Some barely looked up from their phones. When Piper ran into my arms, I thought, this is worth it. And for a moment, it was. But later that evening, when Quentin called and asked if I'd ever thought about selling the house, I knew what was coming. I just didn't know how far he'd go. The call came in just after 8. I was still in my robe, sorting laundry on the couch, when Quentin's name lit up the screen. He didn't bother with a greeting, just went straight into it. "Mom, you and Dad had some savings, right?" I paused, wondering where this was going. "We set some money aside," I said carefully, folding a dish towel in half. "Why?" His voice stayed even, but the undertone was clear. "Heather and I found a house. Bigger place. Good schools. A pool. But we're short on the down payment." I sat down, towel in my lap. "Quentin, that money is for my future. If I get sick, if I need in-home care. You know your father worked hard, so we'd have that cushion." He didn't answer right away. Then came the shift, soft at first, but rehearsed. I'm just saying, you don't need a house that size. You live alone. You could sell, downsize, keep what you need, and help us too. I waited for the part that always came next. It's for your grandkids, Mom. They'd each get their own room. You'd even have a space to stay when you visit. I stood up and walked into the kitchen, needing something to do with my hands. I like my house, I said as I filled the kettle. Your father and I chose it together. We made a life here. He sighed louder this time. It's been 3 years, Mom. You can't live in the past forever. It's not practical. You'd be safer in a retirement community. No stairs, no yard work, better medical access. I didn't reply right away. The kettle started to hum on the stove. I pressed my hand against the counter. I'm 68. Not 88, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I managed just fine. Okay, he said finally, if that's how you feel. Then he hung up. No goodbye, just silence. The following day was Thursday, my usual day with Lily. I arrived at their front door just before 8, and Heather greeted me with her usual bright, polished smile. She looked like she always did, flawless makeup, tailored suit. Her hair curled under, just so. Morning, Judith. Lily's finishing breakfast. I left a list on the fridge. Oh, and please, no sweets. She had a tantrum last night, and we think it might have been sugar. I nodded, stepping inside. The same air of calm tension, as always. As Heather gathered her things, she added, Quentin and I have an appointment with the Realtor tonight. Can you stay late? She said it like a passing comment, but I felt the undercurrent. So, they'd moved forward with the house. Of course, I said, even though I hadn't forgotten our conversation the night before. Lily was already at the kitchen table when I walked in, her spoon chasing cereal through the milk. When she saw me, her whole face lit up. Grandma, she called, milk on her chin, arms raised. I scooped her up, kissed her forehead, and for a moment, the world quieted. We read books, painted pictures, walked to the park, and made grilled cheese for lunch. She was asleep on the couch by 3 curled into a ball, one thumb still tucked near her mouth. I sat beside her and turned on the news quietly, one eye on the phone in case Heather called. It rang at 3:17. Quentin, we're at the house, he said without even saying hello. There's another family interested. We have to decide fast. I didn't say anything. Look, Mom, he continued. I just thought maybe you'd reconsider helping. There's a guest room with a private bath, no stairs. You'd be comfortable. I told you yesterday, I said calmly, I need my savings. I'm not giving up my house. The irritation in his voice sharpened. You're being impossible. You live alone in a big house while we squeeze into a place half the size with 3 kids. It doesn't make sense. I don't have to justify how I live, I replied. Your father and I worked for that house. It's mine. Then forget it, he snapped. We'll manage on our own. I just don't understand why you're being so selfish. And the line went dead. Saturday came clear and cool. I was in the garden pruning roses when I heard the SUV pull up. I wiped my hands on a towel and walked around the side of the house just in time to see Quentin, Heather, and a woman I didn't recognize climbing out of the car. The woman carried a thick folder and wore the kind of blazer that meant business. Before I could ask, Quentin was kissing my cheek. Mom, this is Olivia Taft, he said. She's an interior designer. Works with the Cormacks. You remember their place? Big kitchen island, open floor plan? I nodded slowly, unsure where this was going. She's just here to get a sense of the space. Heather added her smile, polite but firm. We thought it might be time to update a few things. Update? I repeated. I don't recall asking for renovations. Oh, come on, Mom, Quentin said, waving off my concern. The kitchen's outdated. The wiring needs updating. This is for your safety. While I stood there in the entryway, Olivia wandered through the living room, snapping pictures on her phone. Heather ran her hand across the drapes like she was shopping. I felt like a guest in my own home. They talked about potential, knocking down walls, replacing shelves. Olivia mentioned resale value. Heather chimed in about energy-efficient lighting and smart thermostats. I set the coffee tray down a little harder than necessary. "If something needs fixing, I'll handle it," I said. "I didn't ask for a remodel." Quentin crossed his arms. "You're not listening. This isn't just about decor. Olivia's going to bring the house into this century. Controlled from your phone. Everything modern." I shook my head. "I don't want a house that talks back. I want my switches. I want my home." Heather leaned forward, her voice soft but edged. "Judith, we're only trying to make life easier. You're not getting younger. At some point, managing all this will be too much." My chest tightened. "I'm not helpless," I said quietly. I was an accountant for 30 years. I still balance my checkbook by hand. I remember every birthday in this family, including your parents' Heather. Her cheeks flushed. She turned away. That's when Quentin stepped in, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't speak to my wife like that," he said. "She's done more for you than you deserve." "Deserve," I echoed, but he was already moving, pointing around the room. "You're being ridiculous. This house will be mine someday anyway." "Why delay what's inevitable? I haven't gone anywhere," I said. "I'm still here, and it's still my house. Not for long if you keep acting like this," he snapped. "I'll have you declared incompetent. Say you're a danger to yourself. Who do you think they'll believe? A successful executive or a woman clinging to memories?" I stared at him, too stunned to speak. Then I said it. "Quiet, steady. Leave, or I'll call the police." He laughed, tossed his phone at me. "Go ahead." I didn't call. I didn't need to. I walked past him, picked up my purse, and walked out the door. Behind me, he was still yelling. Heather was trying to calm him down. Olivia looked like she wanted to disappear. I didn't look back. I got in my car and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there another second. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just kept driving. The roads blurred into neighborhoods I hadn't visited in years, older parts of town with brick buildings and slow traffic. At some point, I found myself parked in front of a red brick office building with an old sign above the door, Radcliffe and Associates Real Estate. I remembered the name. Kyle Radcliffe. We'd met briefly at Sarah Tilden's funeral 6 months earlier. He was handling the sale of her home and had passed me his card with the kind of warm, practiced ease that realtors use at wakes and community fundraisers. I opened my wallet, and there it was tucked behind an expired coupon cream cardstock embossed letters, a local number. I sat in the driver's seat, staring at the card, the air still heavy with the echo of Quentin's words. "This house will be mine someday anyway." I reached for my phone and dialed. It rang 3 times. "Kyle Radcliffe." He answered, his voice just as I remembered it, professional friendly. "Mr. Radcliffe, this is Judith Walpole," I said. "We met at Sarah Tilden's funeral. You gave me your card." "Of course," he replied without hesitation. "How can I help you?" I took a breath. "I want to sell my house," I said, "and I need someone I can trust." He didn't ask questions. "Are you available now?" he asked. "I'm in the office." "I'm parked right outside," I said. "Give me 2 minutes." His office was on the 2nd floor, a neat space with soft lighting and a desk that looked like it had been dusted twice that morning. He stood to greet me, a tall man with silvering hair and a navy blazer. "Please have a seat. Can I get you anything?" "No, thank you," I said, sitting down with my purse in my lap. "I just want to know how fast I can do this." He didn't blink. Selling a house depends on a few things, he said. Condition, location, timing. But first I have to ask, are you sure I've never been more certain? I told him. He nodded. Then let's start with the basics. Tell me about the property. I described the 4 bedrooms, the 2 bathrooms, the kitchen with the window over the sink, the living room where Edmund's chair still sat untouched. I told him about the rose garden, the garage, the basement workshop that hadn't changed since the year Edmund passed. Kyle took notes, carefully asking about roof condition, plumbing updates, and square footage. Then he opened his laptop and pulled up listings from my neighborhood, comparable sales, current inventory, recent closings. Based on what you've told me, he said, you're looking at a price range between $700,000 and $800,000. We'll narrow it once I've seen it myself. Monday morning, I said. 10 o'clock. He marked his calendar. That works. He leaned back slightly. Have you thought about where you'll go after the sale? My friend Eloise moved to Florida last year, I said. She keeps a room ready for me when I visit. I was thinking I'd start there. Florida's a good market for retirees, Kyle said. I've got contacts in Sarasota, Pine Haven, Naples. I can connect you with someone who'll treat you right. I nodded, absorbing more than deciding. He slid a folder across the desk. This has everything you'll need, paperwork, process, timelines. If you decide to move forward, we'll make it smooth. I left his office with the folder tucked under my arm, feeling like I'd stepped through a door I couldn't walk back through. That night, I ate leftover chicken curry in silence. The house was quiet except for the clock ticking in the hallway and the soft hum of the refrigerator. I stood in the living room for a long time, looking around. The framed photos, the threadbare armchair, the faded rug beneath the coffee table. Everything felt like it had stopped moving. It wasn't grief anymore. It was stillness. Monday morning arrived with soft light and cool air. Kyle rang the doorbell at exactly 10, holding a tablet and wearing the same calm expression I remembered. I showed him around. He listened as I pointed out the updates, the memories, the places where life had unfolded, Edmund's workshop, the wall where we'd marked Quentin's height in pencil, the patch of garden that still grew mint without asking. You've kept it in beautiful shape, Kyle said. I see a lot of homes, Mrs. Walpole. Yours is special. Back in the kitchen, we sat at the table with cups of tea and his tablet open between us. I'd recommend listing it at $750, he said. It puts us slightly above the neighborhood median, but you've maintained it well, and your lot is bigger than most. I nodded. Let's do it. He pulled the listing documents from his case. If we sign today, I can schedule photos this week. We'll be live by Thursday, showings over the weekend. I picked up the pen. The papers felt heavier than they looked. I signed. He smiled, collected the documents, and stood to go. You don't have to be here for showings, he said. In fact, it's better if you're not. Buyers like to picture themselves in a space. Understood, I said. I'll make myself scarce. After he left, I started sorting. Not just clutter, but years. I filled boxes with old linens and extra dishes. I gave away coats I hadn't worn since Edmund died. I kept the photos, the letters, the handmade gifts from the grandkids. I found a company to deep clean the house. I called a gardener to tame the lawn and trim the rose bushes. I replaced light bulbs, touched up paint, cleared the shelves. The rhythm of it settled me. By Thursday evening, Kyle sent me a link to the online listing. The photos were beautiful, bright, clean, warm. The rose garden glowed. The rooms looked airy. The description read like a love letter to the life I'd built. That night, the phone rang. I recognized the number before I picked it up. Hi, Mom, Quentin said. How are you? I'm well, I answered, folding a towel in the laundry room. I just wanted to say sorry for last weekend. His voice was steady, but the words felt rehearsed. I appreciate that, I said. I didn't mention the sale. He cleared his throat. So, the kids and I were thinking of stopping by Sunday like usual. Maybe lunch? I can't this weekend? I said. I have plans. Plans? He repeated. What kind of plans? Just personal ones, I said. We can talk later. There was a pause. Okay, maybe next week then. Maybe, I said and hung up. By Saturday afternoon, Kyle had called with news 3 offers were already lined up for the Sunday showing. I expect strong turnout, he said. We might see a bidding situation. I had made plans to stay with my friend Beatrice for the day. Her house was just across town, and she always had coffee on and banana bread in the oven. I packed a tote with a book and a change of clothes and left the house early Sunday morning before the first car pulled up. When I came home that evening, Kyle's voicemail was waiting. 15 groups had toured the house. 3 had lingered. We'll likely see offers by Tuesday, he said. I'll keep you posted. I stood in the kitchen listening, my hand resting on the edge of the counter. Something about the way he said it made everything feel real in a new way. By Tuesday afternoon, the first offer came in $720,000 from a couple with 2 small children. By Thursday, a second offer arrived, just a little higher. And by Friday, a third $760,000 from an older couple moving closer to their grandchildren. They're pre-approved and ready to move quickly, Kyle said. It's a solid offer. I didn't hesitate. Let's take it, I said. He began the paperwork. I called a realtor in Florida the same day. Eloise had sent me links to a few houses near her neighborhood in Pine Haven. One stood out right away. White clapboard siding, a wraparound porch, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and a narrow path through the dunes leading straight to the beach. The price, $420,000, was within reach, and the pictures made something in my chest loosen. I spoke with the Florida agent the next morning. She confirmed the home was still available and promised to send a full information packet. It's a quiet street, she said. Most folks are retired. It's a peaceful place. That night, Heather called. Her voice was polite but uncertain. Judith, I just wanted to check in. Quentin's been off lately. He was hoping you'd be at dinner last weekend. The kids miss you. I sat on the couch with the lights off, watching dusk crawl across the living room. I've had a lot going on, I said. Some personal matters. There was a pause. Anything we can help with? She asked. I appreciate that, I said. But no, I'm handling it. I could hear the confusion in her voice. Okay, well, if you need anything, just let us know. I said I would. Then we hung up. The contract paperwork for the sale was finalized the following Tuesday. The buyers, Albert and Dorothy Pearson, wanted to close in 4 weeks. They're good folks, Kyle said. Been in their last home for 45 years. I think they'll treat this one right. I nodded, looking around the house. The curtains I'd sewn myself. The lamp Edmund had insisted on buying during one of our weekend trips. The wall with Quentin's crayon marks still faintly visible behind the bookshelf. I started packing the same day. Not everything. Just the pieces I knew I wanted to take. Family photos, a few quilts, my good dishes. I made notes on furniture, deciding which items would stay for the Pearsons. Most of it would. The dining set was too large for the Florida kitchen. The sofa too worn for a fresh start. I boxed up my books and framed the listing printout of my new home in Pine Haven. It sat on the counter like a promise. On Friday evening, Quentin left a message. Mom, I hope you're not still mad. Heather says you've been distant. I thought maybe we could talk this weekend. Just let me know. I didn't call back. On Sunday, Kyle confirmed that the final walkthrough was scheduled. They'd like to meet you if that's okay, he said, just to put a face to the place. I agreed. Albert and Dorothy arrived just after 1. He wore a short-sleeved button-down and khakis. She carried a notebook and wore soft blue flats. They moved through the house, slowly pausing to admire the sunroom and the garden view from the kitchen. These roses are something else, Dorothy said. I always wanted a yard like this. They're hardy, I said. Just need the right hands. She smiled. I'll take good care of them. When they left, she shook my hand and held it for a moment longer than necessary. "Thank you," she said. "We'll make sure this place stays loved." That evening, Heather called again. "Judith," she said, "are you okay?" "Really, I was wrapping dishes in old newspaper on the kitchen table." "Yes, Heather. I'm okay." "Quentin's still confused," she said. "He thinks you're avoiding him." I folded the paper over a teacup and placed it gently in the box. "He and I will talk when the time is right." There was a pause. "He's worried you're pulling away from the family, from the grandkids." I sat down, rubbing my fingers together to brush off the newsprint. "I'm not pulling away. I'm just stepping into something new." Heather didn't ask what that meant. She thanked me for the chat and hung up. The following day, I called the Florida Realtor. "My house is under contract," I said. "I'm ready to make an offer." She confirmed it later that afternoon. "Congratulations," she said. "The keys will be waiting for you when you arrive." I spent the next week coordinating the move. I hired a small company to transport what little furniture I was taking. I ordered a new mattress to be delivered in Pine Haven. I arranged for the utility shutoff forwarded the mail and dropped off donations at the thrift store downtown. On Thursday, I stopped by the bank to sign the transfer documents. A young man named Brandon handled the transaction. "It's a big move," he said. "Florida, huh?" I smiled. "Time for a change. You'll like it," he said. "Sounds peaceful." As I walked back to my car, I passed Quentin and Heather's street. Their black SUV was parked in the driveway. The curtains in the front window were drawn. For a moment, I slowed. Then I turned the corner and kept driving. The morning of the closing, I stood in Kyle's office with a pen in hand and a line of papers before me. The signatures came easily one after another. When it was done, Kyle leaned over and shook my hand. "Congratulations, Mrs. Walpole. It's official. The house is sold." He passed me a folder with copies of everything and a final checklist. "The Pearsons are thrilled. The funds will be wired within 24 hours. I thanked him and stepped out into the parking lot. The sun was warm on my back, but the air carried a strange weight. I sat in my car with the door open for a few minutes, listening to the distant hum of traffic. My phone rested on the passenger seat. I knew I had to make the call. Quentin didn't answer. I left a message. "It's Mom. I need to talk to you. Please call me back." That afternoon, I finished packing the last of the boxes. The movers were scheduled for Wednesday, and I had 5 days left to vacate the house. I boxed up the dishes, folded the linens, and labeled everything going to Florida. In the evening, I was sorting through photo albums when the doorbell rang. It was Martha Collins from next door. She wore her usual cardigan and held a Tupperware dish. "Judith," she said with concern. "Is it true you sold the house? I saw the realtor taking down the sign." "Yes, Martha." I nodded. "It's true. I'm moving to Florida." She blinked. "Florida? But why now?" I stepped aside to let her in. It was time. We sat at the kitchen table. She asked about Quentin, about the kids, about whether they were moving too. I shook my head. "No, just me." After she left, I stood at the window and watched her walk home, the porch light flicking on as she reached her door. Not long after my phone rang. Quentin. His voice was sharp. "Mom, is it true you sold the house?" "Yes," I said quietly. "The papers were signed today." There was silence on the other end. Then his voice rose. "You sold the house without even telling me, without offering it to me first. I left you a message this morning," I said. "After the fact," he snapped. "You didn't ask if I wanted it. You didn't even give me a chance." I paused, steadying my breath. "Could you have bought it, Quentin?" "You said you didn't have enough for a down payment." "That's not the point," he said. This house is where I grew up. It's Dad's house. You gave it away to strangers. It was mine to sell, I said firmly. And I did what I needed to do. He was quiet for a beat. What are you going to do now? I bought a house in Pine Haven, I told him. Near the ocean. I'll be moving in next week. You what? His voice cracked. Florida. Just like that? Yes. He let out a bitter laugh. And what about the kids? Piper was crying last week because she didn't see you. Lily asks about you every day. I felt the words settle in my chest. I'll miss them too, I said. But there are phones, video calls. They can visit. And I'll always be their grandmother. That's not enough, he said. You left us. No, I said calmly. I chose something for myself. There was a pause, then a shift in his tone. Was this because of the thing with the designer? Is that what this is about? It was everything, Quentin. Not just that day. His voice dropped lower. You sold the house. You moved to another state. I don't even recognize you anymore. I said nothing. He exhaled hard. You know what? Do what you want. Just don't expect us to come running after you. Then he hung up. I sat in the quiet kitchen, the line still open in my hand. I poured myself a cup of tea and stared at the window as the last of the daylight slipped behind the trees. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. Heather. Judith, she said cautiously. Is it true you're moving to Florida? Yes, I said. She hesitated. Why didn't you tell us? Really tell us. I wasn't sure how to. She was quiet. You know the kids are going to miss you. I'll miss them too. And Quentin? She trailed off. He's not handling this well. I know, I said, but it's not just about him. There was a pause. So what now? I live my life, I said, and you live yours. And maybe in time, we find a way to stay connected. Heather didn't argue. She didn't push. She just said, I hope you find what you're looking for. Thank you, I said. I think I already have. That night, I drafted a letter to Quentin. I wrote it by hand and folded it carefully. Dear Quentin, I understand why you're hurt. I should have told you sooner, and I'm sorry for that. But please understand, I didn't do this to hurt you. I did it to live. I love you, and I love the kids. But I am also a person with hopes, with needs, and with a right to peace. The house was part of our past, but my future is somewhere else now. I hope you'll come visit. The door will always be open. Love, Mom. I left the letter on the kitchen table next to a small envelope of photos from when Quentin was a boy. His first bike, a trip to the lake, his graduation day. The house was nearly empty now. Just a few chairs, some boxes, and silence. But for the first time, that silence didn't feel like loss. It felt like space. The last few days in Falls Church moved faster than I expected. The moving truck pulled into the driveway right on time. 2 men in dark blue shirts stepped out and greeted me politely. I opened the front door and let them in, guiding them through the house I had just signed away. The boxes were already stacked neatly along the wall. Most of the furniture I'd decided to leave behind. I watched as they wrapped the few pieces I was taking my writing desk, a small dresser, the rocking chair Edmund had bought when we first moved in. By mid-afternoon, everything was loaded. The truck rumbled to life and pulled out of the driveway. I stood on the front porch for a long time, just staring at the rose garden. The bushes were full and green. The white roses had started to open again. I bent down and touched one of the petals. Inside, the rooms felt larger without the furniture. I swept each corner, wiped down the windowsills, folded the last of the linens. I left the photo of Edmund and me in the entryway, leaning gently against the wall, just as I promised Dorothy I would. She had asked me to leave it behind. "Only if you are comfortable," she said. "It makes the house feel like someone loved it." The next morning, I left the keys in an envelope for Kyle to give to the Pearsons. I stopped by the bakery on Main Street and bought a dozen muffins for the neighbors. I made my rounds quietly. Martha next door, the Hendersons across the street, the couple on the corner with the wind chimes. We hugged, exchanged best wishes, promised to write. Everyone asked why I was leaving. I told them the truth. "It's time," I said. "I need something new." At the airport, I watched the city slip away beneath the clouds. The flight was short, smooth. When the plane touched down in Florida, I pulled out the letter Eloise had written last month, the one with the directions to her house. "When you land, take a taxi straight to me," she'd written. "I'll have lemonade ready and your keys in my pocket." The cab rolled through palm-lined streets, the windows down, warm air pouring in. Pine Haven wasn't a big place. The ocean peeked through between the rooftops, blue and steady. When we pulled up in front of the little white house with blue shutters, I saw Eloise standing on the porch. She wore a wide-brimmed straw hat and waved as the car stopped. "Welcome home, Judith," she said, hugging me close. The house looked exactly as I remembered from the photos, white trim, a narrow walkway lined with hibiscus, a small fenced garden out back. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lavender and wood polish. My furniture had already arrived. The moving crew had followed instructions perfectly. The desk was by the window, the rocker in the living room, the dresser tucked neatly beneath a painting Eloise had given me. That evening, we sat on the back porch and watched the sun dip into the ocean. The light turned the waves orange, then violet, then soft gray. "Tomorrow," Eloise said, "we'll get your voter registration changed, set up your utilities, and start filling this place with your things." I nodded, sipping my lemonade. "It already feels like mine," I told her. In the days that followed, I unpacked slowly. I bought curtains for the bedrooms, plates for the kitchen, pots for the garden. I found a chair at a thrift store that reminded me of the one Edmund had used in his workshop. I planted basil and rosemary in clay pots near the back door. The grocery store was only a few blocks away. I signed up for a library card, joined the senior center's yoga class, and started walking every morning along the beach. Quentin hadn't called. Heather hadn't either. But Piper did. It was early evening when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. The number wasn't familiar, but when I picked up, I heard a soft voice. "Grandma?" I felt my heart jump. "Piper." "Yeah, it's me. I used Mommy's phone. She's in the kitchen." I smiled. "It's so good to hear your voice, sweetheart." There was a pause. "Daddy said we're not supposed to talk to you." I closed my eyes. "I know, honey, but I miss you," she said. "Lily misses you too." I cleared my throat. "I miss you more than I can say." "Are you really living by the ocean?" "I am," I told her. "I can hear the waves when I open the window. And I have a rose bush in the back garden, just like the white one I had in Falls Church." She didn't say anything for a moment. Then I heard her sniffle. "Daddy said you left us." "No, baby," I said gently. "I didn't leave you. I just needed to find a place where I could take care of myself too." Another pause. "Can we come visit?" I smiled. "Anytime you want. There's a room just for you, painted yellow, and a little bed for Lily too." "I have to go," she whispered. "I love you." "I love you, Piper." The line went quiet. After that, she called once a week. Always from Heather's phone, always after dinner. She talked about school, about Lily's drawings, about Ethan trying out for swim team. I never asked if Quentin knew. I didn't want to put her in a hard spot. One afternoon, while I was planting marigolds out front, Eloise came walking up the path with a small bouquet of lilies. "You've got mail," she said, handing me a plain white envelope. My name was written in Quentin's handwriting. Inside was a letter. 3 short sentences. "Mom, I still think what you did was selfish, but Piper misses you. I guess we'll figure something out, Quentin." I folded the note and tucked it between the pages of my gardening journal. I didn't need to respond yet. He had opened a door. That was enough for now. That night, as I sat on the porch watching the moonlight flicker across the water, I thought about the quiet unfolding of this new life. No shouting, no guilt. Just room to breathe. I hadn't erased my past. I brought it with me in the form of photo albums, recipes, and a few carefully chosen keepsakes. But I wasn't living under it anymore. The breeze carried the scent of the ocean. Somewhere down the street, a wind chime rang softly. I rocked back in my chair and listened. Tomorrow, I'd go to the farmer's market. On Thursday, watercolor class. Friday, choir rehearsal. And maybe someday soon, another letter would come. The invitation came in the form of a photo. Piper had drawn a picture of me standing on the beach, waves curling around my feet, a yellow sun above my head. It was tucked into a manila envelope with a note from Heather. "The kids want to visit," it read. "Quentin is still unsure, but I think it would do everyone good." I called Heather the same evening. She answered on the second ring. "We were hoping you'd say yes," she said. "They've been asking for weeks. We settled on spring break 10 days, just the kids. Heather would fly down with them, stay overnight, then fly back while they visited. I offered to cover the flights, but Heather insisted they had it handled. It's the least we can do," she said, her voice soft. When the day came, I waited just outside the airport's arrival gate, my heart fluttering. Piper spotted me first. She dropped her small carry-on and ran into my arms. "Grandma," she shouted. Lily followed, dragging her ladybug suitcase behind her. Ethan hung back a bit, headphones around his neck, taller than I remembered. But when I opened my arms to him, he stepped into the hug without a word. At the house, I showed them the rooms I'd prepared. Piper's walls were painted a soft yellow. Lily's room had seashell decals along the baseboard. Ethan's had a desk, a lamp, and a small stack of mystery novels I'd picked up at the library's used book sale. "It's not Falls Church," I said, "but I hope it feels like home." "It already does," Piper said, tossing her backpack onto the bed. We spent the first 2 days on the beach. They collected shells, built a crooked sandcastle, and splashed each other in the shallows. I brought juice boxes and peanut butter sandwiches, and we sat under a striped umbrella while the sun moved across the sky. At night, I made simple dinners, spaghetti with meatballs, chicken tenders, grilled cheese. The girls helped set the table. Ethan mostly stayed quiet, but he ate everything I made. After dinner, we watched movies curled up on the couch with blankets and bowls of popcorn. Lily fell asleep first, always mid-scene. Piper would carry her to bed, whispering stories as she tucked her in. One morning, I found Ethan sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone. I poured him a glass of orange juice and sat down across from him. "You okay?" I asked. He shrugged. "Yeah. Just, this is different. Different good or different bad." He looked at me for a moment, then set his phone down. "Good, I think. Quiet." That afternoon, he asked if he could go on my walk with me. We walked along the beach, not saying much, just letting the breeze do the talking. He kicked at the sand with his sneakers. "Dad's still mad," he said suddenly. "But I think he misses you." "I miss him too," I said. "He said you left because you didn't want to be part of the family anymore." I stopped walking. "That's not true, Ethan. I left because I needed space to live my own life. But I never stopped loving any of you." He nodded, digging the toe of his shoe into the sand. "I figured. Piper said you didn't sound mad in your letters. Later that evening, after the girls were in bed, Ethan helped me with the dishes. He washed, I dried. Dad said I should ask you what it's like here, he said, rinsing a plate. I think he wants to come. The idea sat between us for a moment. I folded a dish towel, then placed it on the counter. If he wants to come, I'll be here. On the 8th day of their visit, we went to the farmer's market downtown. Piper found a necklace made of beach glass and asked if she could give it to Heather. Lily picked out a jar of local honey. Ethan wandered to the bakery stall and returned with a paper bag of cinnamon rolls. For the plane, he said, handing it to me. And for you. The day before they left, we took a group photo in front of the house. The girls stood on either side of me, Ethan just behind, with his arms around their shoulders. I printed a copy that evening and slid it into a frame on the mantel. At the airport, the goodbye was harder than I expected. Lily clung to my leg, Piper wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her hoodie, and even Ethan hesitated before hugging me tightly. Heather met them at the gate. She hugged me too. Thank you, she said. You gave them something special. I stood by the window and watched the plane taxi down the runway until it was just a silver shape disappearing into the clouds. When I got home, the house felt quiet again, but not empty. There were crumbs on the kitchen counter, folded drawings on the fridge, and a lone flip-flop under the couch. It made me smile. That evening, I poured a glass of iced tea and sat on the back porch, the sun casting long shadows over the garden. The roses were blooming again, delicate and full. My phone buzzed. A message from Quentin. Heather told me the kids had a good time. Thanks for taking care of them. Maybe next time we can come together. I read it twice, then set the phone down on the table. Maybe next time. That first quiet week after the kids left, I took my morning walks along the shore, letting the breeze carry away the last pieces of bitterness I'd been holding on to. The house felt different now. It wasn't just the footprints in the sand out back, or the small drawings tucked in the corners of the fridge. It was the sense that maybe finally the old wounds between us were beginning to heal. Piper sent me a letter, a carefully folded page covered with seashells and hearts, saying she missed our talks, and that she'd started a collection of her own by the creek near her house. Lily's note was a photo her grinning wide with her front teeth missing, and the words, "Grandma, I love you, bigger than the ocean." Even Ethan wrote a single line on a postcard from a science museum, "Wish you were here." One Sunday, I got a call from Heather. She told me Quentin had started talking more about the past, about choices, about how anger never really solved anything. He's thinking about visiting this summer, she said. There was hope in her voice, but also caution, like someone testing the ice on a half-frozen pond. I told her I'd leave the porch light on just in case. The seasons shifted, and the roses in the backyard bloomed again. I planted new hydrangeas beneath the kitchen window, and every morning I'd sit with my coffee listening for the laughter of children, hoping for the sound of a car pulling up the drive. Some mornings were lonelier than others, but even the quiet felt different now. Not empty, just waiting. That summer, the visit happened. They came as a family, Quentin, Heather, the kids, and we sat around my kitchen table passing plates, telling stories, stumbling at first, but slowly finding our way back to each other. The conversations were careful, sometimes awkward, but honest, in a way we'd never allowed before. Quentin and I talked long after the others went to bed about regret and forgiveness and the hard work of beginning again. He didn't say he was sorry, not exactly, but his presence at my table was enough. The grandkids played cards on the porch, their laughter drifting through the open windows like a melody I thought I'd lost. In the end, it wasn't any grand gesture that mended us. It was small acts of choosing to show up to listen to, let the old pain have its say, and then move aside for something better. I learned that sometimes justice doesn't look like payback or victory. Sometimes It's the chance to start over, to be known and loved for who you really are, not just for what you've endured. If you're listening to this, I hope you find a place where you can lay down your own burdens, where kindness feels like sunlight on your face. And if this story meant something to you, share it with someone you care about, or just take a quiet moment for yourself. Thank you for spending this time with me.